Welcome to the Spiritual Sovereign Sister podcast with Elizabeth, Akashic Records practitioner, teacher, and founder of Divine Feminine Reiki. I also offer one-on-one sessions for those wanting to read and do energy work in their Akashic Records, as well as providing an online community called the Lightworker Sisterhood, where intuitive women can learn and even train in various modalities so that they can heal themselves and be of service to others. And this podcast is for the spiritual woman ready to reclaim their power from misaligned communities, toxic sisterhood, and deepen their understanding of spiritual topics. Spirituality is the doorway. Sovereignty is the embodiment. Welcome to episode 1 of this new podcast. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself and set some intentions for this podcast. As you may know, my name is Elizabeth. And as someone who has rebuilt their life from many experiences of complex trauma, I now help women to heal and find the same peace, clarity, and empowerment that I did. I've had a lot of extreme experiences where others have tried to control me. So I understand the hardships that come with that and how this collective wounding is for women. I took a spiritual path as well as incorporating some traditional therapy methods to my healing. And after 6 years as an energy worker with Akashic Records, Holy Fire Reiki, and past life regressions, I began to focus also on teaching, especially esoteric spiritual topics. There's a lot of misinformation, or these can be considered more complex in their understandings, and require a deeper dive into them. I also want this podcast to be a place where we have the hard conversations for the sake of healing. We are experiencing a rise in spirituality thanks to social media, and this is great, but a lot of what we see on social media is what I call pop spirituality or New Age spiritualism. And this is where it's all about manifesting our desires and following the 111s and the feathers and making sure that we're always high vibe and love and light. And these concepts have their place, but it's not the definition of what the spiritual journey actually is. And when we decide to start our path, it's easy to get caught up in this. This podcast is meant to provide you with a grounded approach to your spiritual journey so that it actually supports you in your everyday life. Now, from the perspective of the Akashic Records, we learn the most through our relationships with others. And it's also beneficial to reflect on our experiences that we have with others as we navigate our journey. If you aren't sure what the Akashic Records are, they are a multi-dimensional field of consciousness that records all of our soul's experiences since we left Source. Now, some call it the Book of Life in the Christian perspective, but for now, just consider it sort of like a cloud storage for the soul. And I'll do another podcast on what the Akashic Records are. I have learned personally that sovereignty is where we take the lead in our life, from setting boundaries, sitting with our difficult emotions, finding support, especially among women, reclaiming our inner power, and educating ourselves so that we can make informed choices. So if you struggle with any of these, especially in your relationships, I want this podcast to be a place that you can explore this. Now that we've gotten some of the housekeeping things out of the way, today's topic is, what is spiritual sovereignty? At its core, spiritual sovereignty is about taking responsibility for your own spiritual experience, trusting your own inner authority, and no longer giving your power away to external voices, whether that's teachers, groups, traditions, popular spiritual narratives, your family, anything. Because it's about knowing yourself and living from that inner knowing. So I want to cover some practices that will support you to develop your sovereignty. And these are ones that I personally have learned and when I work with other people in their Akashic Records. The first practice is radical self-responsibility. This means owning your thoughts, choices, boundaries, and actions and reactions. And I want to make this clear. Sovereignty isn't about being right, but it is about choosing what aligns with your own integrity and values rather than what others want you to believe or do. Because we always have a choice. And this is something that I had to learn when healing from sexual trauma. I may not be able to control what this person had done to me, but I can choose for myself. Am I a victim and I want to stay there? Or am I a survivor who is healing and thriving? Here are some questions that the Akashic Guides offered me in my healing whenever I was trying to understand radical self-responsibility. And asking yourself daily, are my decisions mine? Or are they influenced by fear or approval or external validation or past events? Am I taking ownership of how I show up in relationships and communities? And finally, what was my role in these situations, past situations? This is what I meant before whenever I had to make a choice as to what role I played in my own internal narrative of what happened to me. And it took a while for me to finally choose the role of survivor rather than victim. But that is a journey that you cannot, if you're dealing with that kind of thing, you can't force yourself. You have to take time and step into that when you are ready. But it can be done. The second practice is deep self-study and personal education. And this is going to be with any path that you choose. Learning about spiritual topics isn't this academic thing. It builds discernment. And this includes studying different spiritual traditions from a place of curiosity, not what's comfortable. It also includes questioning concepts rather than accepting them as truth right off the bat. Asking yourself, does this resonate to me right now? If not, okay, then we let that go. And if it does, great. We can take that with us for a time. But self-education helps you notice when something resonates with you versus when you're just adopting it as someone else's belief system. The third practice is connecting to your core values. Understanding your values anchors your authority in yourself. And when your actions and choices align with what genuinely matters to you, your inner compass becomes strong and reliable, and you start to trust your intuition more. Reflection practices to help with this is going to be reflecting on past situations and relationships and identifying the moments when you compromised your values or your boundaries and why. And this is going to help you get clear on what is important to you beyond the obvious. So, for example, it's obvious that no one wants to interact with someone who is dishonest. Nobody wants that. But recognizing when someone approaches you to engage in business or personal life, and you notice the signs and energies of when something feels contractual versus authentically wanting to know you. And the value there is that you desire a deeper connection based on mutual respect, not energetic economics. And then reaffirming your intentions maybe each morning in the beginning as this builds this internal consistency that you rely less on those outside validations. The fourth practice is discernment in community and among community leaders. Sovereignty doesn't mean isolating yourself and then calling it a boundary. It means choosing participation consciously. Many teachers emphasize that learning from others is valuable, and that's true, but never at the cost of your own inner authority. And the three biggest breakdowns that I've seen within the spiritual communities, especially in sisterhood communities, is individuality, authenticity, and a lack of fluidity within the hierarchy. Now, in communities, there's a natural hierarchy. There's always going to be a person who is heading the sisterhood or the community. And then there's more of a helpers with the inner circle. And then there's people that come and participate. But in healthy communities, there's a fluidness to this, meaning that we shouldn't have to go through others to be able to get to the leaders or the inner circle, or have to perform or audition for acceptance from the leaders to belong to it. That behavior falls under cult rather than community and is a breeding ground for mean girl dynamics. Healthy practices is, yes, learn from others. And then also noticing when someone is demanding or subtly requires your obedience, your silence, or conformity. Keep your agency as a guiding principle. Agency is going to be very important for your sovereignty. And this can be tough, especially when you have a deep desire to belong. Maybe you're having a difficulty finding a community and you have this deep desire to go headfirst into it because you're excited that you found an opportunity. And that vulnerability can be the very thing that makes you not notice those types of dynamics. There is power in your vulnerability, yes. It's easy when you're in those situations for people to exploit it if you're going into these unhealthy dynamics. We may look at that in another podcast also. The fifth spiritual practice is shadow work and emotional maturity. Now, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record on this podcast, as you will hear me say, doing the inner work is one of the most important things that you will do for yourself. It's also a sign with professionals with spiritual businesses who work from a place of integrity. Healers of all kinds need to be keeping themselves in check, and this is a great way to do it, is to do the inner work and shadow work for yourself. Because if you're not a healer, personal inner work is part of the sovereignty game, because it's about knowing yourself, including the parts that you avoid, fear, or judge. And we can call this radical self-acceptance. A truly sovereign person notices their triggers, understands emotional patterns, and works with their own wounds rather than projecting them onto others. And this falls under self-improvement, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the superficial sense. It's a self-actualization. So the sixth practice is embodied practices. Spiritual sovereignty is not just a mental game or a philosophical idea. It's embodied wisdom. So practices that support embodiment might include meditation and mindfulness, breath work, somatic movement, where we're getting into the body, grounding in nature, or body-centered awareness type of yoga practices, or even Reiki healing. Because these help you to feel safe in your body, which strengthens your ability to trust your inner guidance. And finally, we're going to come back to discernment, but this is about a personal discernment. Discernment and trusting your intuition. Developing your intuitive sense and learning to trust it and act upon it is crucial. And this isn't about developing psychic abilities. It's about knowing what aligns and what doesn't on a somatic and intuitive level. Your body is part of your intuition system. And yet we often forget it the most because it's not a popular practice according to social media spirituality to do grounding. So a daily practice that I love to do is I will ask a question internally, right? And then I notice immediately any gut sensations or any kind of emotional resonance to it. So it's about seeing how answers feel before they sound. And because there's going to be times whenever, even for me personally, I talk to someone and nothing bad is being said. They're saying all the right things. But then I might feel a heaviness or even shaking sensations in my body. And that's my intuition telling me that something is off, even if it doesn't make sense to me at the time, or even if I don't have evidence of it. But we can miss those body signals if we don't spend time doing these types of embodied practices to develop our discernment. So I want to close with this. Spiritual sovereignty matters because it helps you avoid giving your power to hierarchical leaders conforming just to belong, accepting advice that doesn't really resonate to you, and then taking action based on this misaligned advice, losing yourself in spiritual bypassing or ego. And it actually supports you in trusting your inner voice and knowing your own truth, forming authentic connections, and living your spirituality instead of performing it. And as one definition puts it, spiritual sovereignty is taking radical self-responsibility on your spiritual path and not letting anything external make decisions for you. Thank you for listening to the Spiritual Sovereign Sister podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, or leave a comment and let me know what was your favorite part. And if you're looking for a sisterhood community that supports your successes and nurtures your growth, visit my website. I'll drop a link in the show notes below, and explore the Lightworker Sisterhood. See you in the next episode.